Throw it in the dirt, episode 5. We're back, Pods.
We are back.
We're so
Good to see
back. Good to see you, bro. As we are getting ready to record here, the women's golf team just won the first women's national championship in Ole Miss sports history. Only the fourth national championship in any sport in Ole Miss history. So congratulations to Coach Hinkus
Huge.
and her team, Coach Zach, her assistant, Julia Johnson was incredible. Kennedy Swan, what a just unbelievable. What a couple of days in Arizona. It just goes to show you, and it's in a situation like that, just get in, just get there and see what happens. But before we get off on a tangent here, I'm your host Brandon Hudspeth. My co-host, my pods, Wade Broyles. Episode 5, we're coming in hot. Got a lot to go through. We're gonna do a little bit of live talking about the game tonight. Obviously, we record at night, and the Rebs are playing Vanderbilt currently in a weather delay. So as we kind of go through this and bring in our guests and everything, we will probably interject just some different, hopefully different thoughts and things like that. So again, we're here, ready to roll. What you got? Anything?
Man, I'm excited. I'm not. I know infamously in front of the red light tonight, which is nice. I've got my ring light. Kidding. I'm glad to be here, man. I love the guests that we have lined up. Couldn't express the better sentiments for the Ole Miss golf team, women's Ole Miss golf team. Huge accomplishment.
Kenny Rogers Roasters is what I was trying to think of. The chicken place in Seinfeld. I went back and found it.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it looked like.
Hadn't seen it, but I'll take your word for it.
You have to
Pods.
Yeah. Throw it in the dirt. Episode 5 brought to you by Gentile Apparel. Visit them online at gentileapparel.com. Not wearing Gentile tonight, but they're still our guys. Ran out of the house, forgot to put on the Gentile. So my apologies to Blake. If he watches, which he says he does and listens, I'm sorry. I will make sure I'm better next time. But as we start with the lineup, we'll go through the Georgia recap. We'll get into Auburn game last night. The Rebs get a win last night, 7-4 over the Auburn Tigers in the SEC tournament. We'll get a little bit of an SEC tournament update. Talk through the All SEC selections. The Rebs had 6 guys that made the All SEC team. We'll go through our D1 baseball. Put out another regional projection on Monday. That regional projection was different from what we've seen in the past. It's been different, I think, every week. Some of that is wins and losses, what's kind of going on in the landscape of college baseball. Some of that is those guys are just trying to hit a moving target. So Aaron Fitt puts that out every Monday. So we'll go through that. But yeah, jumping right in. Georgia series on the road, the last series of the year, Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. Jumping into game 1, another just unbelievable gem by Doug Nikhazy. We've talked about it ad nauseum on here, but I mean, the guy is just a unbelievable talent and unbelievable. He really is an unbelievable pitcher as well.
And it was a night that you needed Doug because it was a close one, and so I know you can't foreshadow any of that stuff, but good to see him come out, throw the ball like that. That was fun against a club that plays pretty good, right? We talked about them and we gave a good recap of Georgia, who plays a little better than their record showed. So good to see.
So TJ McCants, another 2-hit performance. KG, Chatnier, Gonzo all got hits. It's good to see, Chatnier is starting to hit the ball again. He's starting to work counts. We talked about it on the last podcast. He's starting to hit the ball hard, have some quality at bats, which we need out of him. If we're going to make a postseason run, we got to have Chatnier. The Rebs win the game 2-0. And 2-0 sounds like a close game, but if you watch the game, I mean, it just never. There were maybe an inning or two late where it kind of felt like maybe something, was going on, but overall, it never felt like it was in danger, honestly. And that's good to see, especially just with, again, going back to that, we need to win on Friday nights to have success with this team. We've shown that if we lose on Friday nights, it doesn't set our weekend up because we struggle on Sundays. And if we win on Sundays or day 3, it's with the bats. So getting that first game is huge. And so moving into game 2, well, I'll tell you what, man, game 2 was a great college baseball game for a lot of reasons. You had another guy that we talked about on this podcast just last week and said, hey, we need another arm to step up. We need another guy. And Brandon Johnson just comes out of the pen and blows doors. The guy was on fire. He was electric. He was in mid-90s the whole time he was out there. Gets the big strikeout. I don't know if you've seen the GIF from Pitching Ninja. That he has the reaction when he walks the guy, where he's just like angry.
Yeah.
And then he comes right back and he strikes out the guy, and he's just, just brings the energy. What was your take? Like, again, another arm that just kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was fun to see. It seems like, and I don't want to be like, oh, doom and gloom, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like it was awesome to see. But I feel like at times our guys get jacked and wear their emotions all over their sleeves sometimes. I would love to see him just maybe a couple notches, pull it back. And almost say it's like, I kind of equate it to a Tiger Woods fist pump, right? If you do it every hole, it kind of loses its energy, right?
So you're not a Wes Burton guy?
He's animated, man. But I get it, dude. I used to kind of be in my own little zone whenever I would throw too. I feel like those animations can get you in trouble a little bit. There was a couple times when he almost put up his hands, to the umpire on a close pitch. That was a ball, which, if you're going to argue, at least argue the strike. Nonetheless, like, we got another bullpen arm. Love to see it, right? The other question is, where's he been? Right?
Yeah.
So expose these guys more often than not would be my kind of hot take.
That's a good question. I think the easy answer is he, and this, you were in the program. I know this from being around the program and being on, a part of some teams. Bianco is give you an opportunity in the midweek. If you do well and you succeed in that opportunity, he will give you a shot on the weekends. But the caveat there is he'll give you a shot typically when maybe the game either is out of reach or is swung in a different direction. Momentum maybe has been seized in a certain way. He's not throwing you in the fire a lot of times, which can be a good and a bad thing, and from the emotion standpoint, as a fan, we love, I love that. I understand what you're saying, like maybe dial it down when it's a ball, but you strike out a dude that's in a situation where it's a big strikeout, like give me that guttural, like from the deep scream, that roar. I'm a fan. I felt like we needed the juice then, and he gave us the juice, if that makes sense. Like we needed a little something, and he was.
I feel like if it's, look, don't get me wrong, bases loaded, 2 outs, and you get a big strikeout, let's go. But runner on first, and you're up by 3, whatever. Maybe I'm being pessimistic tonight.
Yeah, but we were at the time. At the time, we were down, and then had come back and tied it. So there were some big outs that he got. So speaking of that, we go back-to-back home runs. Kevin Graham hits a big home run, and then the captain. They switch pitchers. the captain comes up to bat. He DH, which is another something that we talked about on the podcast last week. We jokingly said, we had Seth Ketchalone, who, is really known throughout Ole Miss baseball circles as a guy that, not only have multiple assistant coaches relied on, but even Coach Bianco in certain times for that kind of stuff. And we jokingly said maybe Coach was listening. Maybe he listened. maybe he tuned in for the Keschel episode.
Maybe we dedicate show 5 to him. Hey, Mike.
That's right, 5, baby. But I did think it was interesting to see him starting at DH, which it's again, it's one of those. If you're gonna run him out there, let him get some at bats, let him get some swings. You can't rely on a pinch hit situation for the rest of the year for a guy of that caliber. And he's delivered. He's been.
Well, and my thing and what we talked about on the show is like, whose spot is he taking that? To be able to run well, you got to get on base first, Hud.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, a bum-legged Elko who is hobbling base to base, and in all honesty, he's not tremendously slow as long as he's going straight line.
That's right.
I'll take it. Like, dude, let it eat. Go for big fly. Let's see if you can be the difference maker. But the biggest thing is he provides the spark for the offense. Period.
That's right. And so you get back-to-back home runs, get the home run to tie it, or the run to tie it late.
Did you feel like that was going to be a home run? Like I knew when he was coming up, I'm like, he's going to tie the game. Like it was on one of those things where you just like, it has to happen.
I didn't know that. I knew it when it came off the bat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He hit that ball to the freaking moon, man. That ball was mashed.
For sure.
He did not miss. So the Rebels end up coming back in 11 innings, getting the win, 8-5. Broadway closes it out for his 12th save of the season, which leads the SEC. Again, the guy he's had really 2 tough outings all year. Other than that, he's been pretty lights out. He's been put into some, for lack of a better word, impossible situations, and he's come out on the other side more times than not, which is really good. Moving into game 3, what do you say? McDaniel suffers his first loss. He really struggled with command. He's a guy that, to have success, he has to pitch the ball in the zone, and when he doesn't, he really struggles. He was at 41 pitches after 2 innings. That's not ideal, and so we had to go into our bullpen, and as we noted on last week's show, the bullpen has struggled. The bullpen has been in rough shape, and when we get deep into those bullpen arms, we get ourselves into trouble. Georgia kind of just they chipped away and continued to score, and they added runs each inning, and they come away with the win 13-2. Again, at that point we had already won the series, and I'm not going to sit here and say that our guys, when they come to the park, they play. They're SEC caliber players, but when you've won 2 out of 3 with Georgia on the road, your job is done essentially. And so, we lose a tough one, take it on the chin a little bit. And that, that kind of just, to me, there's not a lot more to analyze about that game.
Other than, I wish we would have given Doherty a start.
Yeah, you're still on
it's that. Coming.
I agree. I think at some point you gotta just see what he's got. He did pitch. He did pitch in that game.
He did fine, I thought.
Yeah. Again, you're being put into a situation that's tough, and there was just a lot of particulars in that. So moving forward, we go into the week. We end up being the 5th seed. We talked about last week potentially the 6th seed. We end up being the 5th seed in the SEC tournament, playing Auburn. Played that game last night. And the talk all week across baseball circles was, who do you start? And then it comes out on, I want to say Monday, that Coach Bianco says he's going to start Nikhazy. Well, my initial thought is that's That's crazy. Only because he pitched on Thursday. Now you're making him come back on Tuesday. Short rest. He threw 112 or 115 pitches on Thursday. So, that's a little bit of an extended outing. Now he has gone 100 plus his last like 6 outings, or 7 times this year. I think I heard on the radio network the other night. But my thought, just because of, again, being around the program and knowing kind of some of the particulars of what Bianco likes to do, was, it's just going to essentially just be a bullpen, right? And you and I texted a little bit about it, and you had a little bit of a different take, and so obviously I want to hear that. But I went into saying like, no way, we don't need to do this. This is bad. Let's give Doherty, or let's give somebody else an opportunity here. And we did. We went a different direction.
I mean, hindsight, it worked, right? Doug isn't on the IL right now. But I just don't like the move. Like, it feels like we're trying to ride a horse in a game that really doesn't, in my opinion. Every game matters. Don't get it twisted. But to the point that we're going to throw and potentially jeopardize a career off somebody, and maybe you look at it and say you're being harsh. I don't like that. I want full days rest, and it wasn't there. And it's not like he had a short start on his last start. You can take the bullpen approach, and that's his bullpen day, this, that, the other. Bullpen's not the same as live competitive juice flowing pitching. And so I didn't like the move. I want to see guys like we know Doug is there. We know what he has. Give somebody else a shot who hasn't been given a shot in a big game that really doesn't. I don't want to say doesn't matter, right? I mean, I think we all know that. But perfect case in point. Look at what Vandy's hopefully going to do tonight, right? Throw a kid who isn't a bad pitcher. Anybody in the SEC, first off, isn't a bad pitcher. Okay. Second off, he's a kid that hasn't started an SEC game, and you're throwing him against some really good Rebels team. Why are you doing that? Because Corbin understands what it takes to make it far in the postseason, and you've got to have a guy that you may find in the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, like I told you, I thought the move was interesting at best, potentially devastating at worst. If Nikhazy goes out and gets hurt, you can pack it up. I mean, it's done, because he's our guy. I did think it was interesting. I texted back and forth a little bit with David Kellum this week, who was with Coach for extended time frame, doing his interview, pregame interviews, and he brought up the regional and hosting a regional, and if we get into a situation where we're facing a 4 seed that we feel like we can maybe beat with our number 2 or number 3 guy, that he said at the end of the day it would depend on who it is, who the other team is. And we talked about it. Seth said it on the hair, who's an analytics guy. Your best chance of winning a regional, because I think super regional, who knows? Throw Doug on Friday or the first game, then you let your offense try to win one of the next 2, and I think you're okay. A regional is just a little bit different because of the setup and how it works. So I did think that was interesting. Again, we won the game last night 7-4. Offense kind of honestly kept adding, kept putting on. Auburn got up early. We answered immediately with an inside park, the home run by Justin Bench, which was kind of crazy. Hit off the wall. It looked like it went over, and then it just rolls around. The left fielder doesn't move. He scores, so it ends up being a home run.
It was weird because there's like a fence behind the fence, and it hit that, which I thought if it hit something out over the yellow line, I don't know, it was strange.
It was
Anyway,
like,
I guess a home run nonetheless, I guess.
right. So it's like, it was like he walked out. It was like, do we challenge this? It was like, well, it's either way, it's a home run. So, challenge or not challenge, this is still a home run. You're welcome. And so we ended up winning the game. Big home run by Dunhurst. It's good to see him swinging it. Gonzalez continues to just, I mean, like I said, I was up and down on him early, but the last like month, that dude has just been unconscious. I mean,
you called him out first show, and he told you what he thought about it.
I'm sure he listened. So Rebels win 7-4, puts us now into the double elimination side of the or double elimination part of the SEC tournament, and we take on Vanderbilt tonight. Again, currently in a weather delay. I've got it pulled up, and I'm literally watching it right now. Rain. But yeah, so before we kind of move on, I do want to go ahead and bring in our guest because he was a part of some memorable SEC tournament teams, and I think it'd be cool to kind of talk through some of this with him. So I'm gonna go grab him, pull him in. This is a guy who I've always been a big fan of from day one. He was a freshman whenever I was a student manager on the team, and was just a amazing human being. He was a consummate teammate. He always treated us like, we were just another guy on the team. I mean, he was just a great person, and has done really well in life. And you knew even back then, like, whatever this guy does, he's going to be, great at because of who he is and just his personality. But our guest tonight is none other than the catcher, Justin Brashear. So let's bring him in. JB, what's up, man?
My man.
How you doing?
Good, man. What are you guys up to?
We were hanging out. We thought we'd give you a call, see what you're up to.
I'm a little busy right now. I can't do it right now. Sorry, a little busy.
Oh, you need to call us back?
Yeah. Like my man JT did.
What's up? How you been?
I'm good, man. How are you guys?
We're good.
You look good.
Thank you, man.
You look so good. Hey, thanks for coming on the show, man. We this has been fun. We've been able to catch up with some guys and kind of hear their story, not only as coming in, but then also just kind of where they've been since they left. Because I think you guys come in, everybody we've had on the show, minus Seth, but everybody we've had on the show, you guys come in, you're these like larger than life guys, student athletes, these heroes, all these kids, and then eventually you have to go get real jobs and go do things in life. And so it's been fun to kind of catch up with some of these guys and just to hear the story of like, where you been, like what you've been doing, like where have you been since then. So I'm excited to get into that with you a little bit later. Before we get to that,
watch too, I'll tell you that it's been fun to watch.
Well, good. We hope we've certainly gotten a lot of text messages, tweets, Facebook messages, calls of not only guys saying like, hey, when are you going to get me on, but really just support from people saying like, hey, this is great, this has been awesome, it's good to see so and so. Like, I've been texting with Barry Gunther, who I've reconnected with, and I told him like this week, I was like, we've got Brashear on. He's like, tell him I said hello. So it's been cool to like catch up with people that you spend a lot of hours with, just in Swayze, on buses, in hotels. I mean, you spend so much time together.
Adversity, full
right.
of normal.
Sneaky tea.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, so we were getting into the SEC tournament, talking about last night's win, which was awesome. I know you still keep up with the team and kind of know everything that's going on, but I just want to get your kind of take of what is Hoover like? What is the SEC tournament like? And like, what is that? You make it, because back when we were still kind of like, or when I was a student manager and you were on the team, like you had to make it to the SEC tournament. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, I mean, you still technically have to do that, but look, if we're one of the bottom 2 teams in the league, something has gone terribly wrong.
Right.
So we're not
Yeah.
really worried about that now as much now, but back then we had to, the team had to make the tournament.
Yeah, it was Hoover. To answer your question, Hoover's awesome. You go through a 30-game grind, and then you go to Hoover, and it's like a dogfight for a week with like everybody's just throwing haymakers, and it's really cool because at least back then everybody's in the same hotel, so you see a lot of the dudes like in the lobbies and stuff, and it was right there next to the mall area, whatever. So like you're really wanting to go 2-0, so you get the day off, and you go kind of like cruise and check it out, but. Man, the atmosphere, you walk in and the crowd is usually pretty fired up. It was great. Like it was the most fun when like Auburn and Alabama would make it because like those crowds would be huge, and the years that they were down, it was, still our fans were great. I mean, they're going to travel anywhere you go, but man, it's cool to walk in and see it. And that place is a cavern. You playing in there, it's like one of the hottest places I've ever played in my life, but it's such a great atmosphere, and it's such a fun battle for that 6 or 7 days that you're there. Man, it was one of my favorite tournaments to play in for sure. Despite being 0 for Hoover. I'm 0 for Hoover.
You said that earlier. I was like, and I was gonna bring up like, what's your most memorable hit? You're like,
I don't have one. Yeah.
Got some great walks.
My most memorable hit is Alex Presley going deep over the second fence in dead center field. That's my most memorable hit in the whole tournament.
So tell me, even though for Hoover, that's okay. Tell me, you played on some teams that went deep into that tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about those 2 teams that kind of were on Championship Sunday and what that run was like. That
Championship Sunday is probably the coolest. Well, it's hard to say the coolest experience. It's one of the coolest experiences for sure. You're that deep into it. By that time back in the day, they were already, all right, you guys are national seeds or you guys are hosting. You kind of had like the next step out there. And, it's so cool because you still had something directly in front of you to go out and play for a championship. And I mean, honestly, last week I pulled the championship ring out from my safe and looked at it. I was like, man, this is still so cool, like such a cool experience. And I remember the dog pile. In 06 specifically because Klein Beamer closed that game out for us. And I knew he was the guy on Friday night in the regional. And so like, man, at the bottom of the dog pile, I had to like brace myself around him to make sure nothing happened to him. It was fun, man. And I think that winning in 06 was better because we lost in 05. And you watch, a bitter rival beat you and dogpile in front of you, and then you come back and you beat a team with, I don't know how many big leaguers the 06 Vanderbilt team had on it, but there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you come and beat a team like that, and Coach Corbin, he's always a first-class guy, and his team's always ready to play. And that going into the championship game, even though we knew at that point, we're hosting a regional, we knew we were matched up with the Nebraska regional, in the supers. We knew that, but there was still something right there in front of you to play for, and that trophy was cool. The championship walk around the ballpark was cool. The bus ride was a lot better in 06 than it was in 05. Going back to Oxford for sure. But Hoover is a great place to play, man. I hope the SEC is smart enough to never move it from that place, that city. I mean, I get if they go to a different ballpark, but Birmingham, Hoover is such a great place to play. It's centrally located, and I have very fond memories of that place.
Hey, we have an update quickly. 3 minutes till game time.
Sweet.
So we are going to play tonight. So
I got it teed up on the TV, waiting for it to come on.
So what's interesting to me, and you just talked about Corbin, and I think both of y'all really get your take what he's done at Vanderbilt, because when you were a freshman on the team when I was here, and I know you remember Friday night, Vanderbilt, Jeremy Sowers. We talked about it on the last podcast. Jeremy Sowers is going, who's a major leaguer for for double-digit years. And Barry Gunther hits the walk off and holds the bat up, walks down the first baseline.
I remember
And I'm
that.
sure in your head, you're thinking, shit, this guy's good.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's great.
And so it's amazing what he's done there. And it just seems like they always run a guy out that you've never heard of that has like 5 innings on the season. And he comes out and he's just blowing doors, throwing mid 90s. Talk about Corbin, like from a visiting coach standpoint, like a guy like that. I mean, what's your take on a team like that?
So Corbs actually recruited me when he was at Clemson, and I was very close to going and playing in Clemson. He's a phenomenal individual, and I think the one thing that Coach Corbin does well is he finds those points in guys, and he gets the most out of everybody. He lets guys compete, and honestly, that's it. Like he doesn't put reins on people. He lets them go play, and he expects the best out of them. And what they've done at Vanderbilt, it's a difficult school to get into. And Nashville's a great city, but like outside of the campus, like Vanderbilt's campus isn't like going to wow you. But he's built something there that is very special. And I mean, he starts on the mound, and it starts with his old school mindset of pitching and defense. I mean, Vandy's offense has never been their big strong suit. They'll have teams every now and then that can run to the ball a little bit. They have, one-off guys that can really hit. But, man, they just play solid fundamental baseball. And as much as I hate to say this, like he's kind of coming along the path of like Nick Saban, where everybody just do your job and play the game and worry about, playing the Vandy boy style. And it's still fun to watch. And I clearly hope we beat him tonight. But,
Yeah.
it's
no, I'm not trying to. This is not a Ole Miss Vandy Boys podcast by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah. But I do think it's unique that you could tell that Bianco knew how good Corbin was, and it goes all the way back to that. That was kind of I think to us, kind of their almost jumping off point of where it was like he's going to be a good coach. This is going to be a good program. And since then have won 2 national championships.
Yeah. It didn't take long for him to go in there and establish something special, which is, I think it's more of a testament to him than anything else.
So going into really quick, we'll do the regional breakdown, and then we'll jump into kind of just asking you some questions and random questions and different things, just catching up. D1 Baseball came out with their regional breakdown. Oxford Regional, they have us hosting as the 1 seed, and their most recent one, which was on Monday, looks a lot different than the last one, and maybe not a good way. Number 2 seed is La Tech, which we have experience with. They beat the brains out of us in a midweek game where we had some COVID issues and some injuries and whatnot. And then Virginia, who is basically a curse word in Oxford. And then
Coach Johnson's got it figured out. You can't ever count them out.
And then the 4 seed being Wright State, which may set up for our scenario that we were talking about. And again, it's unique that Brashear's on, but the last time Coach B didn't pitch the ace on Friday night was when we lost to Western Kentucky. But we've had this conversation, and I'd love to get your take on it as well. But if we did have a Wright State, coming in, I think that maybe gives us a better opportunity to pitch off and to have Nikhazy for the Saturday, potentially playing the 2 seed there. What's your thought process on that?
Well, you can't win game 2 if you don't win game 1. And I think that, you have to come out if you're fortunate enough to be one of the 16 host sites. And if D1 baseball is right, looking at it, it's a very difficult regional, extremely difficult regional. And I get the idea of throwing Nikhazy, pitching off and taking Doug Day on Saturday. And I like that idea, but it doesn't really help you if you're 0-1. And you're now in the losers bracket, and if you're worried about pitching because Gunner's down or whatever, if you're worried about pitching and you lose game 1, you really have to worry about pitching then. And I think that it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I'm clearly not the coach, but you got to win game 1, I think, to set the tone in the regional. And look, hopefully hopefully you go out and the bats are hot, and Doug may go throw 2-3 innings and have some bullpen innings on Sunday or something like that. Maybe that could be a better scenario, but I think you got to start it.
I love that, and here's why. Wright State, they're number 1 in the country in swinging it. So as a 4 seed, you draw the hottest bat in the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's miserable, right? And it seems like you get a "we are Ole Miss" moment into that. If we break down the stats again, last week, HUD, when we talked about the regional projection, I'm like, I'll take it right now. Let's start tomorrow. Like, let's just go 2-2 and go straight to regionals and not worry about the SEC tournament, because it was really attractive. And I see this one getting ready for the pod, and I start pulling some stats really quick. We all know a La Tech team, some Louisiana boys, Brash. They can play some ball, man. And so
first pitch from this midweek guy for Vanderbilt, 97.
Yeah, right. Good figure.
Well, La Tech, La Tech, man, they've been like the underdog. I'm in Louisiana, and so obviously you hear about LSU, you hear UL, Southeastern even, and La Tech has been slowly building a program. They had one of those weird like rallying moments last year. Besides COVID and everything, they had a tornado that went through Ruston and tore their field up. They had that whole like rallying cry up there, and they're really a strong team. But Wade, to your point, man, Wright State is like Stony Brook. Like when I see that, I get like the weird Stony Brook vibes.
You don't want any of that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And
Definitely
especially
not.
as you're 4, right? Typically when we see a regional and we see a team like this, it's coming out of your 4 seats typically reserved for somebody that may have won a smaller league, right? Maybe like a SWAC championship or something to that nature that they can play, but maybe they're not the number 1 hitting team in the nation. If we go through the stats, just because I think it's interesting, especially if we're going to talk through if this is the regional that we're going to pull, because it does seem like we're close to that time. La Tech is a team that's going to hit right outside the top 10 in the NCAA, and number 11 with a 309 average. For comparison, for listeners, the Rebs, who I would think is a really hot bat team, hits 297, right? So pretty solid. They're going to throw it very similar at a 4.7 and field it pretty good at a 970. Virginia is going to, on the other end of the spectrum, they're going to hit it okay, but they're going to throw it well. They're top 25 pitching staff in the nation. So now all of a sudden, they're going to throw it to a 3.7. We're, like I said, we're at a 4.6. And then obviously we talked about Wright State, who is hot bat central. And then they field at a 978. And Brash, we talk about it a lot. We try and give some inside baseball to people. 978 is solid. You're not kicking a lot of baseballs at a 978 average. So
I think to that point, Wade, people like general population, these stats, a lot of people don't really like get it. But like 978 means that you make 97.8% of the plays that are hit to you. Like that's what that means. That number means. So like 97% of anything's really, really good. And I was listening to you, but I had to get the game on my phone because it's not working.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, just so you know, Justin Bench just got hit for the 24th time this season, which leads the nation.
Unreal.
Hit by pitch. So yeah, Justin Bench on first, 1 out. Our boy Gonzo at the plate.
Love
in the 3-hole. Love the move.
Love this kid, dude. I watched him. My dad and I went to Dallas for that opening tournament.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about who this kid. Admittedly, I don't follow recruiting that much. But like this happens, and I'm watching this kid play. I was like, man, he is really talented, and had a great tournament, and like he's been solid the whole year. So good for him. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we go, we'll certainly keep up with this, but want to jump into just the kind of the get to know where are you now. Obviously, I know a lot about your story. We've been friends for a long time, and as I've said on here before, I don't think people understand the bonds of the locker room and all the time you spend, which I just talked about. But you get to know these people intimately over this long period of time, and people are always like, "Oh, are you in a fraternity or do you do this?" And I always said, "No, I'm a student manager on a baseball team. That's not fraternity, because that's what it is. It's essentially, you all the same things, right?" But I've known you obviously since then, but just kind of walk us through the recruiting process. You talked a little bit about Corbin recruiting you, but how did you get to Ole Miss, and why did you ultimately say, coming out of Barb High School, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
coming out of Barb High School, what was the thing that said, you know what, I want to go to Oxford and Ole Miss?
Skip Bertman. I mean, that's the easiest answer. Skip Bertman. Growing up in South Louisiana, LSU's always like in there, and they got the ESPN thing about him, and I wanted to play for Coach Bertman. And when I was probably a freshman or sophomore, he retired. And so I immediately started looking, all right, like, where's the next best option? Because LSU was so easy at that time, like with the scholarship situation and stuff. Like, it was such an easy transition. I was very fortunate the baseball program in high school was like well established. But when Coach Bertman retired, I said, all right, well, I want to find the next best option. And they had, obviously Coach Laval came into LSU with Turtle Thomas, and those were Skip's guys, kind of handpicked. But I didn't really get a good vibe from him. So there was Coach Wells at Alabama, and Coach B ends up at Ole Miss. The crazy story about that is Coach B was at McNeese in Lake Charles. Like, I grew up, honestly, like going to McNeese baseball camps with Coach B in middle school. Cammie was my 7th grade science teacher, so I've known the family for a long time.
That's awesome.
And when I was 9, I played in this tournament ball thing, and Clint Carver was like our coach, like our summer ball coach. Well, when the job opened up at Ole Miss and they took it, Clint went with Coach B, and Clint was he was like checking in with my family. He's like, hey man, like, we'd love for you to be there. And honestly, I didn't think anything of it. I was just focused on trying to play. So I go out, and I think it was that summer I'm out, and like, I'm playing all over the East Coast, man, up and down. And I keep seeing this dude at the ballpark with his bucket hat on, and his collar on his neck, and his, lipstick, his white lipstick on. And I'm like, man, I just like keep seeing this guy everywhere. And I was in, I think it was in Myrtle Beach or somewhere in South Carolina. And that's
You thought he was like a homeless clown?
Yeah, but I'd seen him like 4 places. So I come up, and after a game, Coach Mack walks up, and it was right after the time when they could approach you and talk and stuff. And he's like, hey man, been watching you play. I was like, yeah, no, I've seen you. Like, I've been watching you watch the tournament and stuff, And he said, we'd love to have you up to Oxford for a visit. So I had never, honestly, man, never heard of Ole Miss outside of I knew Coach B took the job. Clint was telling me, hey man, you got to think about it. And I want to do something different, with Coach Bertman leaving LSU. I kind of had a bad taste in my mouth with the way that all went down. And I wanted to give the guys in my high school a different option. And so I took a couple visits, unofficial visits, and I took a couple of official visits. And man, when everybody was telling me, when you get where you're supposed to go, you're going to feel it. And man, like, stepping on that campus, it just felt so comfortable, and it felt so at home. And then beautiful place, beautiful facility. And then it doesn't hurt that we go out and Eli beats Rex Grossman. And like, my recruiting visit, I'm on the field, like, tearing goalposts down. And, we hung out for the weekend, and I remember, we had the meeting when you're walking out, after the visit's over. And it just felt right. My parents were always like, hey, take all your visits, do everything. And Coach B, met with him, and I walked out, and I was like, man, I told my dad immediately, I said, I'm ready to go back. I'm ready to go. And man, going back in that office, which is like not anywhere close to where it is now, but there's a small little office, like way over tucked in this little corner back then. And, shook his hand, told him I want to be a Rebel. And man, that drive home was like so peaceful for me, because it was such a weight off my shoulders to have that process over with. But more importantly, like, I felt very comfortable with where I was going. I knew the program was kind of like being built, and it was on its way up, and we were going to have a good class, and we were, great guys. Stephen Head was my recruiting, host. And you kind of watch those guys and get to know them. And it was just a great experience from the very beginning on campus. And I'm very glad I made the decision. It was a tough decision, and even through the process of being there, there were considerations that were made about doing different things. And I'm glad I stayed. Glad I stayed as a Rebel.
I remember you were one of the first people that I met when I got on the team in 05 leading into the 06 season.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, this is a cool story now. Probably, it would have been terrifying had you been not this way. But I remember looking at you and your stature and your size and being like, I'm intimidated by the size of this guy. And it couldn't have been any more like 180, like, hey man, what's up? I'm Justin, this, that, the other. And so for what it's worth, my first impression of you was like, this guy, because you always have this connotation, like you're freshman in high school as a senior, you get hazed, whatever, like this dude, like he's about to crush me, whatever. And for what it's worth, Mr. Brashear, it was a good, pleasant experience. And so you represented the Rebs well when I first met you. So, yeah.
And I tell you that comes from like my first experience on campus, going in and you got a freshman All-American that I knew. I mean, I knew Steven from summer ball, and coming in and like the open arms, and you kind of feel like automatically you're part of the team. And it doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you do. Like, it's, can you help us win? And if you can help us win and you're going to help build what we got going on here, like, welcome, come on. And I loved being part of the recruiting process. I thought it was awesome. I enjoyed the experience a lot. So I'm glad to hear that, man. Glad to hear that.
I did always appreciate that about guys, and I feel like, Justin, you were certainly one of those guys that cared about the greater good of the program. And I want you to talk through this a little bit, but you kind of had an offensive surgence in your last couple of years, and Coach Lake being the guy that he is, and now he's at South Carolina, and we played them, and I got to catch up with him a little bit. Talk about what he meant to you, and just kind of that, helping you be a better hitter and do some of the things that are his philosophy that made you kind of better. That year you hit 12 home runs, batted around 300, 280 something. Just kind of, it's what really got you kind of that next level.
Appreciate you giving me points on my batting average.
I don't know.
Give me some
I looked
points
at it earlier. Look, it could be 382.
No, man, no. Coach Lake was he was so much fun to be around because he was so different than anybody else. Coach B was the stoic one that was always like, you could tell he was in control and you knew where it was going. Coach Bunn was always with the pitchers, and I interacted with Coach Bunn as a catcher, and he was a different guy, and he had his pitchers, and they were like his babies, and he was off in his corner doing the pitching thing, and then Coach Mack was doing his thing, and he was so intense. But then you get Coach Lake, who's just like the jolliest dude, and you'd walk over. He always had like the greatest one-liners. He'd always like kind of take you down from if you're really worked up about something, you're worried about what's coming next, you're worried about stuff. He made the game so simple, man, and that was the most fun for me. And honestly, as a hitter, you can think about a million things at any given time. But with Coach Lake, he was like, hey, look, man, go up there, like have a plan, find your pitch, and take your best swing. Like that was your whole job. And as a player, that made it a lot of fun to just kind of be free and go play, And I credit Coach B for allowing him to do that, allowing him to kind of take the reins of the hitters and go do their thing.
So what would you say? I'm sure you have a lot of favorite memories, but as you sit back and reflect, however many years after the fact, when you look back and you go, something that immediately pops into your head as a favorite memory as an Ole Miss baseball player, what is that? What is that pops up in your head?
Man, there's a lot of them. You're right. I would say the thing that resonates the most in my mind is the first time we hosted a Super Regional in 05, and walking out of that locker room onto that field and that buzz in that ballpark and those people, you could see them, man. It was electric. I mean, that that in and of itself is the very reason that I wanted to go play somewhere like Ole Miss. Like that was it, you know. And yes, those teams didn't win ultimately and get to Omaha, but man, that experience. I mean, I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. I remember one game against Texas, I go into pinch run and I'm like, Coach B is yelling at the top of his lungs from like 2 feet away, and I'm like, dude, I can't hear you. I literally can't. Like the crowd's going crazy. And, it took an hour to get out of the ballpark because there's so many people there waiting for you to shake your hands, and kids are running up. And, that whole super regional championship baseball in Oxford and, like, being part of that process was by far my favorite memory.
That 05, when you talk about that Texas series, the thing that I remember is Ian, who you're still good friends with and one of my best friends in the world. We were both groomsmen in his wedding.
Yep.
I remember Ian put up this, the tailgate of all tailgates tents, and there's all these photos. I still have the photo on my wall of the Texas super regional, and there's this huge green tent kind of back tucked in the corner. And this is Ian now works in the food industry and is probably one of the best chefs, unnamed one of the best chefs out there. I don't know if Beard even knows who Ian is.
Man, look, anytime I go eat dinner with Ian, I'm like, hey, you order everything. Like,
right, exactly.
Yeah, I'll take the bill or my half of the bill or whatever, but like you do it. Yeah.
Right. So he sends me a text. I remember he sends a text and he says, hey, we're gonna have a little tent in the outfield for the super regional.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. And so I don't remember how it all went down, but I just remember I show up and he's got they have a truck backed up to the tent with a grill in it, and Gant Boone, who I know you know and Wade knows as well, Gant's got this huge grill that he's brought in, and Ian's cooking all this food.
Yeah.
And it was this unbelievable.
Cast dodging, slinging drinks for everybody out there.
Right. There was this
No.
Oh, dude, there was this unbelievable. I mean, and we still talk about that as again from a fan perspective. Like you just gave us the on the field, chills, whatever. But from a fan perspective, it was incredible, and then you got Ian, who has just this, spread, he's got anything you can think of. He's got, fajitas and, whatever. It was crazy. And so
and I'll tell you, the other thing too, like the crowd, the fans, we talk about a lot of times that, everybody likes to talk, especially now, like Twitter warriors like to get on there and our fans are the best and this and whatever. But let me tell you, I said earlier, Ole Miss fans travel well. They show up, they're always in the game. They know what's going on. They actually know what's going on, but man, we were there when the beer shower started. I had a neighbor back in the day. His name was Casey Pittman. Big Case, if you're watching, what's up? He used to paint a bullseye on his stomach and stand out in right field and yell at me to hit him. Dude, they were into it, man. It was so much fun. You had everybody out in left, and that's right field, But then you had the lifers in left field that still generational things. They're kids and they're out there, their grandkids, and it's still a thing. And as a guy from out of town, from literally the home of the enemy, the sworn enemy, they embraced us. I say us and my family, they embraced everything about us and brought us into the Ole Miss culture. And man, I'll never forget that. That'll never leave my mind. Is how appreciative I am of what they in Oxford, those people and those fans did for me and my family. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I wasn't nearly the caliber as you were, but I do remember specifically there being 4 or 5 people in what was the 2-6 Mafia. And so to your point, I love them. If they're listening, shout out to the 2-6 Mafia. It was super clutch. Mr. Brash, what we all know kind of what the program is and has become famously from the system and 5. We are on episode 5, so we've
Shout out
we've
Five.
we shouted him out.
I appreciate that.
He does listen, right? Because we've got some lineup changes that have been made on our behalf, and so
Nice.
for what it's worth, give us your best, like either A, you can have, it's multiple choice, right? Either A, your best 5 story, or B, I would love to know, like, when is the one time where 5 was so mad at you that like if you could share that experience, that would be awesome.
So real quick, the game, my man Tim Elko just got a hit. I'm going to talk about this.
Love
guy.
it.
Love this guy.
Love it.
So I'll tell you, I'll go both of them. So I'll start with the first one. My favorite 5 stories, probably we got smoked on a Tuesday night against Murray State. And I think it was Murray State. And my boy John Hancock's playing first base. And there's runners.
The mule.
There's runners on first and second, and John's holding the guy on, which you shouldn't do. And so whoever's pitching, I don't know who's pitching, he picks over and like John catches the ball or whatever. And we get like, it's like 12-2 blowout. And after the game, 5's in the locker room, and it was one of those times like everybody knows, just put your shoes like somewhere easily accessible because there's a real good chance you could be back out like taking some grounders or something like until midnight. And he comes in and he doesn't really like start off very angry, but then he gets to a point and he says, "Hey, I'm really glad that John Hancock forgot how to play baseball because when we picked over, he's there." Or it'd have been 13-2. And then he said something about, CJ Ketchum was the only guy in the lineup that like hit that night for whatever, like CJ could just always hit. And he was like, thank God CJ was here tonight or we would have been shut out. And he was like, well, CJ, no, actually, you made an error. You suck too. All the coaches suck. And he's just going on and on. But it worked. The next day we come out like we actually played how we're supposed to play. And that was great. On a positive, like, and that's easy to joke with him about, man. But positively, I'll tell you, my favorite 5 story is probably what happened this year. I went and saw him up in Dallas. And a couple weeks later, and we'll talk about it later, I guess, but I gave him some, I've done some stuff in my career professionally, and I sent him some swag. And Lafferty texted me like a few weeks ago. He's like, "Hey man, I just wanted you to know, like 5 still wears what you sent, like what you gave him, like every weekend." I was like, "Man, that's really cool. Like it's almost like he's a second dad. Like he still cares. He's proud of me, whatever." And that meant a lot to me. But I'll tell you that the time that scared me the most was our first inter squad. When I was a freshman, I came in, I was a highly touted prospect. I just had a knee surgery. I was drafted, come in, whatever. I'm like, all right, I think this is going well. And like, I caught a pretty clean inning. Like I didn't think anything was wrong. And this is back when the third base dugout. And so they watched the game in the first base dugout. And so I run down, ground ball to the shortstop or whatever. And I run down, back up the play. And I get the whistle, "Hey, come here." So I'm running over there and he sits down, and he's not even looking at me. Like he's like looking off to the field. And he goes, "I'm not really sure why I gave you a scholarship." I'm like, "What? Like, what did I do?" And he's just like, you're not moving real well. You're not taking leadership. You're not swinging the bat well. Like, you're just kind of making me look bad, man. I'm like, dude, I thought I caught a great inning. Like, I thought I had a decent at bat, but it was one of those wake up moments where you're like, all right, well, this is a different animal now. Like this is major caliber championship level baseball. And he expects a lot out of me. He expects a lot of everybody, himself included. But that was one of those like, oh boy, hold on to your hats. This is going to be a long one. And then the last one I would say, man, he pulled me aside. I was my junior year. He pulled me aside before one of the games. Like, "Hey, look, again, I'm like, I'm hitting like 310, whatever, a couple doubles." He's like, "Hey, look, the way the lineup works, like, I don't care. I don't want you to hit doubles. I want you to hit home runs. I want you to scare people when you swing the bat." I was like, "Okay." He goes, no, like, here's what you have to do. He's like, get on the plate. Okay. He said, "I don't care what your batting average is. I don't care how many times you strike out. You catch the ball behind the plate. You hit the ball over the fence. You're going to play every day." I was like, "Okay, take the reins off. Let's go." And man, that with Coach Lake, like it just became a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It became a lot of fun to get in there and do it every day.
I think the cool thing about Coach Bianco having been a catcher, right? And I don't know if you've seen the documentary "Hold the Rope" yet, but
I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I'm ready to watch that.
But it's very. I think you've seen the sequel for the last 21 years in Oxford.
Yeah.
I actually stole that from Drew McGee. He texted that the other night.
Yeah, tell Drew I said hello.
I will, for sure. But I mean, he was right. Like, it's mini, no pun intended, but mini Skip Berkman. I mean, it's it's the same. They talked about HWA. They talked about transfer of blame. They talked about all the same type things that we've heard or sat through, and the what was the synergy and Kaizen.
Yeah.
Right. So all the same stuff.
Later, I can still remember it. How about that?
Right. Exactly.
But I'll tell you, Hud, to your point, in 2006, we were playing LSU at home, and Doug Thompson was a buddy of mine. Doug played for Skip. He's a little younger than Coach B, but he came in and he was walking through the locker room. We were out like taking BP or something. He pulls me aside. He's like, "Hey man, I just want you to know, like that stuff in your locker room is the exact same thing we had in Baton Rouge. It's just instead of purple and gold, it's red and blue."
Right.
Like, oh, cool. Like, all right. Like, I feel good about, even better about my decision to come to Ole Miss, and I want to play for Coach B, like Coach Bergman. I got Coach B, and it's basically a chip off the old block. But to your point, a catcher, and I was a catcher, and that was important to me too.
So we had Basham on, and he talked about just that relationship and how important Coach Bianco became to him because of that catcher fraternity, so to speak. And we've had, going all the way back to Charlie Waite, and all the way to Hayden Dunhurst, who, has been a freaking stud this year. Yeah. Just talk about that part of not just the on the field, right? But the relationship that when you leave, that it seems like that bond between Bianco and whatever catcher is behind that plate is strengthened throughout that process.
There's no question about it. And I think it starts, in the recruiting process. And when he wants a guy, he gets him. He goes and there's been very few catchers that he has not, he's wanted and hadn't got. But I tell you, the biggest thing for me, it's the craziest thing to say, but Coach B actually told me one time, there's no such thing as a wild pitch. I'm like, what are you talking about? Wade, you know what I'm talking about. Like he's like, I don't care if it bounces 42 feet from the mound. I don't care if it's thrown a foot over your head, whatever. He's like, it's your fault. If you missed the ball, if the ball hits the backstop, it's your fault. And man, I was like, at first I was like, that's just not fair. We're working hard, we're doing everything we can do. And then I started thinking about it. So you know what? He's right. And he builds that like mentality in you to do things differently and hold yourself to a different level. He's very hard on catchers. There's no question.
I'll say I mentioned this to Bash, and maybe this was just coming from a smaller framed high school catcher my senior year in high school. But when I got on campus and started throwing to you and started throwing to Bash and others, like the presence of just a target, man, you guys made it really easy from a pitching standpoint. So kudos there. I got a quick ask, but let's do a quick update. Your boy Diamond Hud, 3 up, 3 down with 3 Ks. I think he needs to get the ball down just a touch, or he may get in trouble.
I just saw that slider. He struck that guy out on. I was like, "Ooh, gotta get that down."
Yeah,
get that
exactly.
To the moon if he doesn't do that.
But and then we left 2 runners stranded there. This guy that Vandy's throwing is no surprise, really good. So we'll continue to.
I glanced over. As Brashear was talking as I started, I glanced over, saw him throw a 88 mile an hour changeup, and we swung through. I'm like, good Lord.
Yes.
He's probably a Friday night guy at 12 or 14 schools.
Right. 100%, exactly right.
100%. Brash, what give us your best or most memorable teammate story.
Oh.
Maybe I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you who your favorite teammate was, because they're probably going to be on the show.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I don't have a problem with that. Willie Beamer's my favorite, man. All-time favorite. He's
Awesome.
one of my best friends. I texted him the other day, and congratulations to him. Just had a baby girl. Saw Willie in DC a few years back, but he and I had a very special bond, and that's no slight to Cups. I love Cups too, but anyway, I gotta give Beamer a slight nudge, man.
Love it. And he was pretty good.
Beamer was all right.
He was pretty good.
Do you remember? We talked about this. Do you remember when his switch when it turned? Because he was like timid and like just kind of like I don't know, just almost like going through the motions, and then all of a sudden there was like this. It was
probably his first Friday night start in the SEC in the league, and
well, he says it was the midweek game against Mississippi State. I said it was the weekend before.
Yeah.
He came in a long relief outing, I want to say on a Sunday, and I need to go back and really like dig into this. But he walked out and like struck out the first two guys, and I just remember like thinking in that exact moment, that's a different Will Klein. Like he looked angry, and he just looked like he was just. I mean,
I could always see the guys. And you think about the other guys that are like hyper competitive, and like that's Will's. I think his most incredible attribute is like he is so competitive that once you like dig into that a little bit, like he's in, and he's gonna win. Like, and I think that's what flipped the switch. A lot like Lance. Lance going out there as a freshman. I mean, I caught him when he was a freshman. I could tell the guy was different. I mean, besides the fact like he threw a dang near bowling ball, like, but he was so competitive, man. And like, I remember the first time like I called timeout to go up to the mound. He was like, "Go back behind the plate." I was like, "Listen here, dude. You're bigger than me, but you don't like. You need some help right now, right?" And you learn that process. But Will was an incredible competitor and a great friend, great teammate. But he doesn't come in the probably top 3 of my best teammate stories. My freshman year, we were in Mobile playing at South Alabama. It was, because Coach B likes to do the one weekend before you play in conference, you like to travel and get ready for like the the upcoming business trips, right? Well, I'm in my room, and all of a sudden I hear just like this noise down the hallway. Like, what is going on? Loud noise. So I go open the door, and out in the hallway is Matthew Tolbert, and he's working on his steel brakes at like 11:30 in the hallway on like the Thursday night before we play on Friday. And I was like, what is this dude doing? But he was like so fast twitch, like he stole more bases that weekend than I stole my entire career. So I guess it worked for him. But it was just so funny because I'm like, as a freshman, that's my first time on the road. I got no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's Tolbert, like our starting shortstop, like just hauling it down the hallway, man, like working on his fast twitch muscles.
Quick interjection to that story. So not a lot of people know this, but when you go on the road, like the student managers collect all the gear for everybody, and then the visiting team takes the gear, washes it, cleans it, brings it back to you, folded and clean or whatever. Well, their student manager comes like back with all these bags of clothes, and I like he calls me and he's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm on the 3rd floor or whatever." Same floor as Tolbert. And Tolbert's in the hallway doing still stops, and the guy's like comes up with these bags and he's standing there, and I was like, hold on, wait, stop. And all you see is Tolbert fly by.
Dude,
and I was like, all right, come on.
He was like on dead sprint. Like I thought he was about to like dive in head first, but he was just wild.
And the guy was tripped out because he was like, what is happening? I was like, he's working on his still stops. Like, and like it was normal to me because we knew Tolbert, but like to him, he was like, dude, y'all are intense. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's how we
Over
do it.
He's going to take 3 bags tomorrow night. Just tell your catcher to get ready.
Right.
I think I would say another one of my favorite teammate stories was my man Cooper Osteen. He has white snake boots. But Cooper had an arch nemesis, and that arch nemesis was a man named T2, who was a parking ticket guy. And he would always he would find Cooper's Camaro and he put him in a boot one year. And I think it was 05, put him in a boot. And Cooper was so mad, man. Like, he was just infuriated when he wasn't doing his air drums to Motley Crue songs. He was railing on T2, man. So if you're watching, I still remember T2. And my third one is probably one of my favorite ones. I got a text message one morning very early, getting ready to go to school, and it was Stephen Head. He said, "Hey man, where are you parking today?" I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, park by the field and check out my truck." So I was like, "All right." So I park and I check out his truck, and come to find out, there's like a deer. There's like an 8-point deer in the back of his truck, and I'm like, "Dude, where'd you get this deer from?" But he would apparently he had a stand out in right field in the woods between the ballpark and Roanoke, and he had a little honey hole, man. He didn't tell anybody about it, but he smoked him at 8-point before class, and then
I don't even think that's legal. That's in the city limits.
he had a bow. It's probably past the statute of limitations, so tell the cops, just let it go.
I don't care. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and then we go out to his house. I think he lived in Shiloh back in the day, and he had like the A-frame, and he got this deer in the backyard. And he's like, "All right, light the pit up." Like, we ate backstrap that night, but it was pretty awesome. That was pretty cool.
That is cool.
I love it. So you finish at Ole Miss, you get drafted, go into minor league baseball. So one of the things that I think has been cool about this is, as we've gone and talked to guys, is give us kind of fill us in on the minor league piece, and then at some point every baseball player, whether you're a Hall of Famer or a high school whatever, there's a time that comes where you're either told you're hanging the cleats up, or you make the decision on your own to hang the cleats up, and then you kind of move into the real world. Yeah. So give us like part one of walk us through leaving Ole Miss and the time that kind of left Ole Miss, and then part two, kind of where you are, and kind of walk us through. Obviously you get married to Autumn and all that, but walk us through kind of part A, the baseball segment, and then part B, just kind of like getting into life.
Yeah, so I got drafted, and I'll tell you, man, like, thinking about this, I've thought about this a lot. Pro ball is a great goal for a lot of young kids, and it's something that like everyone wants to do. Man, I'll tell you, like, the moment that you get a paycheck for playing the game of baseball, it loses its innocence completely. It becomes a business, and it changes the way you look at the game in general. That said, I had a great time playing pro ball. I got to go to, a lot of places I would never go again. There's a town, Autumn and I still talk about it today. There's a town in Oregon we went to on a day off. Like, we saw a tumbleweed. We went saw the Oregon Trail. You see different places. I've seen.
You didn't get like hepatitis or whatever it was.
No. There was one red light. There was one light. There was one, like, they had one restaurant which was like also served as a general store and like urgent care clinic for the whole town. But it was a really cool experience. And I think that you go there and you're playing for yourself, which is a lot different than playing for a team or playing for a university and playing for, even bigger than university. Like, you're playing for an idea at Ole Miss. You're playing for, a generation of people that always wanted to be there and wanted to support the program and wanted to make something out of that little beautiful, like, hidden gem in northern Mississippi. And everything there was about winning, at Ole Miss, and everything in pro ball is not. It's about getting to the next level. that was tough to experience, but you're right. You know, there are life lessons to learn. There are things you can take with you. Um, you know, and then there does come a time, doesn't matter who you are. I mean, you're like you said, somebody's either going to tell you it's time or you're going to tell yourself it's time. And for me, you know, I kind of realized Autumn and I got married in 2008, and I kind of realized that, like, you know, coming out of spring training, I wasn't really getting where I wanted to go. Um, and Cups and I were together in Arizona, and he and I spent a lot of time together. We talked a lot about it, and he was so clear, man. He had a plan in place, and like his plan worked out perfectly for him. And then as you know, I got into the season, I remember I was like, man, this is not going to work out. And I remember telling Autumn, I was like, look, season's over. Like, I'm done. I'm ready to kind of move on. I kind of could tell that I wasn't really a prospect in that organization anymore, which I was fine with. But I also had a wife and had other responsibilities, started to kind of feel that. And then I got released in June. And man, honestly, like for me, it was a huge relief because like I didn't have to worry about like I didn't have to worry about disappointing anyone anymore. I didn't have to worry about like, you know, the schedule or what's next or like trying to do whatever. Like I could focus on the things that I want to focus on. And you know, made the decision to go back home, got back in school, and you know, kind of turn the page. And I'll tell you, the night I got released, AJ Hinch, who's now, you know, of Astros lore and now with the Tigers, he was the guy who released me. And AJ was great. And in that whole process, my manager is Mike Bell, who just passed away from cancer in spring training. Mike was one of the finest people I've ever met in my entire life. Just a super, super great guy. And they were both very professional about the way it all went down. And they were like, look, man, like you can turn the page. You can tell us you're wrong. Go find another team to play for. You surely can do that tomorrow. Or you can go home and you can turn the page. And you can go be a husband, go be, you know, a productive member of society in your community. And that right there, like that kind of triggered it for me. Like, all right, it's time to go home and to go play the game of life instead of the game of baseball. And, you know, you can still take a lot of the lessons that you learn. And I think going back to Coach B, you know, the accountability aspect of like, there's no such thing as a pass ball. Transfer of blame is not acceptable. You got to have HWA, like all those things. As you start thinking about it, it manifests itself somewhere down the line. And I found that as I get older and I start doing the things that I'm doing now, it's definitely very helpful for me to have experienced what I experienced in college and then in pro ball. And I'll tell you that you know, I get asked the question all the time about what do you regret? Like the only regret I have is that honestly, I left too soon. I should have stayed as a senior. I should have come back. But I mean, that's hindsight looking back at it and knowing what I know about the world now. But it is a transition, man, and it's tough. You know, a lot of guys lose themselves in that process. So I'm very fortunate to have the family that I have. I mean, I've been dating my wife since 2004, and you know she's been with me through all this. We have a beautiful little 5-year-old girl, and you know that keeps everything in perspective. You know, so I'm thankful for all that.
Bet you're a great girl dad.
I love being a girl dad, dude.
So I'll let Wade do a game update, and then we'll finish that a little bit. We'll finish up with one more question, and then kind of move on.
Yeah, it looks like as we're getting ready to do the update, Bench gets a single off of one of the nastier pitchers I've seen in a hot minute since Leiter, and
that's a really good slider. Oh, this is my daughter.
Yeah.
Hey,
hey,
a little late for you.
Dad let her stay late. I like it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So Justin, being in the legal world, what was there anything, you know, we talk about like we kind of went over some of the things in the system and words of the system, if you will. And one of my favorite kind of, I guess, phrases is figure it out. And it's almost to the point that you were just kind of alluding to, like when it came time, you figured it out, right? And you've got what seems to be a thriving law practice. Tell us a little bit about that, and tell us about, you know, something that you've done or did through baseball that's helping you today in your practice?
I appreciate that question, because there's a lot of, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got done playing. And, we were honestly driving home from California, and Autumn wakes up, scares me to death. She's like, "Hey, you need to go to law school." I'm like, huh? What? It's like 2 a.m. But I thought about it, and we talked about it, and we did it. We jumped in and did it. And where I am now, man, I started my own firm back in October. I was very fortunate to have worked for some different people and learn a lot. But where I am now, I'm in the litigation world where I'm representing injured people, and so I'm building a team around them, and that team may be doctors or economists or whatever it may be. But everything I do is preparing as if I'm preparing for a ball game, like a big game, right? So getting ready for a trial is just like getting ready for a Friday night game. You're going to have a scouting report. You're going to know what they're going to do. You're going to know what they're going to say. I mean, you're going to know, and you're going to get the best. And that's honestly for me, taking that from baseball and understanding how and appreciating how to take those lessons and apply them into my world. It allows me to be super competitive, which I still like. I'm just competitive in a different way. But I'm not. The game of baseball obviously is a game of failure. And so in my world, I'm fortunate that I don't fail very much, but if it happens, it happens. And I understand how to deal with that adversity. I understand how to deal with that failure. And I'm okay with that. I go up and I compete every day. And I don't think that I'd have been able to do that had it not been for my experience playing the game of baseball first and foremost, but then going through the process of coming to Oxford, working with everyone there, getting to meet the people there, being away from my family. That was a big thing. You had to grow up, you had to be away, and you had to learn how to handle yourself, almost as a professional, and take accountability for what you're supposed to do. And nowadays I can take that and I can flip it into, I can pour that energy into my clients, and I can say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. The catcher in me still comes out. I'm still the leader. Try to see the whole field. And just have fun with it, man. Just compete and have fun with it.
Awesome.
Hey, I'll give you guys a quick tip though. So earlier we were talking about family, and this is not 100% public record yet, but we have the newest future Rebel will be born in November. So
hey,
let's go.
Oh boy.
Congrats.
Boy, howdy toddy.
Yeah, I've already
Congrats.
ordered my Boston Red Sox onesies, and I've already ordered his first T-ball set. So
that's right. We'll get you a throw it in the dirt onesie. We'll have to send you a throw it in the dirt.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Well, look, man, we appreciate the time. We need to probably wrap it up, but I could talk to you literally all night and just catch up as we've gone through this process, and as we continue to kind of reconnect with people. It's been really fun for a lot of different reasons that I said earlier, but you're certainly, for me and for a lot of people, just the consummate, like I said, consummate teammate. As I was introing you, talking really good about you before you came on. I'm always been a big fan, and always feel like you are the prototypical Rebel, the prototypical Ole Miss baseball player that not only Coach Bianco wants, but that community wants, and all that. So again, thanks for coming on, and our plan is down the road to maybe start bringing some guys back and doing twofers. So maybe we have Cups on. We'll get you to come back. Get you to come back and rib him a little bit. But man, thanks for the time.
I'm happy to do
that. Please do. And Brashear Law, right? So go check you out. What is it? What's your website?
It's Brashear-law.com. I appreciate that, man. I didn't ask for that. I appreciate that.
There you go. So Brashear-law.com. Go check them out. If you're, if you somehow find yourself in an ambulance and you need representation.
I hope you don't need me, but if you do, I'm happy to fight for you.
There you go. I love it. So yeah, thanks. And follow us, dirt_pod on Twitter. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/dirt_pod. We're excited to continue doing this and getting more and more guys on.
Hey, man, tell you guys, I think that this is an awesome experience. What you guys are doing is outstanding. I think it's wonderful. I think it's long overdue, and I think you guys are perfect to do it. So also, I will tell you, I've been watching the Gentile Apparel. I agree 100%. The stuff's fantastic. Check them
Awesome.
out. For sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Awesome.
Blake will be a big fan of that.
For sure. I love that stuff.
Good. Good.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks, man. And we're going to
Thanks,
sign
Brash.
off, and we'll see you guys next week.
Howdy, toddy, guys. Later.
Howdy.
See ya.